Welcome back to the adventures of Abby and her new trans boy friend. Not boyfriend, like I mean a boy that's
a friend who's a boy.
A friend who's a boy, a male friend, yeah. Like seriously, because at this point, that's basically what this game has become: the adventures of Abby and Lev, basically.
Hey, it's like how Beyond Two Souls became the adventures of Jody and God. What was that boy's name during the African mission?
I can now I don't know, Jova, sorry. I can now imagine, Jova, what it must have been like, the writing session. Oh boy, you see, look how let's see, I found a great idea for how to properly demonstrate the true moral ambiguity of the situation, guys. You know, I'm gonna have Abby be the one character in this entire series that is so noble that she goes out of her way completely to protect this trans boy. There you go. See, now people don't have any choice but to like her. Otherwise, they're transphobes.
I don't like Abby. Shut up.
But sir, doesn't that kind of mess with Abby's character motivations and potentially endanger the group that she's a part of?
Evan, could you fire this guy? He's questioning me. And then you're fired. There you go.
Anyway, so hopefully we won't have to deal with any more padding. I'm sure the game can't think of any other way to.
Go ahead.
Also, come on, dude. Just come free of the wall like we know you're totally going to for a jump scare.
Very good, Jova. Very good. However, that's the thing, Jova. The jump scare is random. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
That's, I guess, kind of intuitive.
Well, I guess he decided not to jump this time. Okay.
I need a drink. Don't worry, it's not alcohol. I'll be right back.
Don't worry.
So, Shiroi, what percentage of this game would you call padding compared to actual plot?
How about like 70?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's gonna be most of it. I'm bored.
Again,
join the club.
Again, The Last of Us 1 areas were small, to the point, and were just as big as they needed to be, and had enough dialogue in between, and enough cutscenes in between each level. You know, the game got to the fucking went straight to the point and was paced pretty much exactly as it should have been, with no real issues in terms of pacing, if you ask me.
Maybe I'm glorifying the memory of it, but yeah, I don't really remember there being any padding segments. Like, there was literally the introduction segment between Joel, Tess, and Ellie. That pretty much got straight to the point.
Hell, you want me to... Sorry, go ahead.
I really cannot think of a moment where there was blatant padding in Last of Us. Maybe there was slight padding with stuff like the whole, oh, Joel is kind of injured and, you know, has to, you know, stay at this certain place for a while. But even still, there was narrative significance to it as well. To the fact that even if you do technically consider it padding, it didn't feel like padding.
It's not padding because it's important for Ellie in particular, because this is the point where Ellie now has to basically, you know, step up and, you know, be the one that hunts, you know, like she has to basically learn things the hard way from now, because she's the one who has to hunt rabbits so she can keep feeding herself and Joel. It's important for character development. It's not at all padding. I think there's a purpose to it.
You know, Pedro, yeah, that literally pretty much points it out. That's what a lot of this game feels like. A lot of this game feels like if you stretched out the segment where Ellie has to hunt for Joel's sake, you know, like, well, if you stretch that out into, like, an entire game. Because, again, for a lot of Ellie's campaign, that's essentially what it's been. Leave Dina at the theater, go here, go back to the theater, go here, go back to the theater. Now here with Abby, it's pretty much a similar case, except, you know, the hub world is the aquarium in, you know, the case where we're going on this quest for Yara. And yeah, I get it. Because technically this is in Abby's neck of the woods, she technically does stay in this area, but again, it just makes the plot feel the more stagnated. I get it, you know, we're not going to as many different locations as we did in the first Last of Us, but all this stuff contributed and lumped together feels like we're literally going nowhere. Heck, we're literally stuck in this one area for most of the game.
If you're gonna make this game this long and slow, actually take advantage of the slow pacing. You want to build a bond with Abby and Lev? Okay, go ahead. Have them interact more. Have more scenes have more cutscenes. Have them actually talk to each other during these bits to keep the player's mind from wandering.
And arguably, that's what makes Abby's campaign honestly more frustrating for me. Yeah, technically more plot is happening, but at the same time, you're seeing much more opportunity for character development that the game is blatantly not taking. At least with Ellie, you could argue, it's Ellie. We're familiar with her. Yeah, it was annoying that we didn't get to maybe see some screen time between her and Tommy, or more screen time between her and Jesse, or God forbid she and Dina have a much better relationship than what the game actually gave them. But at least with Ellie, there was more still to focus on her overall path. Abby has had multiple different focuses. Mind you, the only reason this is happening is just because she wanted to check up on Owen, which required her having to go through enemy and infected territory just to check up on him because he was feeling emotionally blue. And mind you, we know that Owen won't really have to deal with the repercussions of whatever he did against the WOLF because, well, you've seen what happens to him. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lev. Lev just shot an arrow through that infected's head.
Yeah, thanks, Lev.
Again, like this kind of pacing works in Deathly Hallows Part 1 because Deathly Hallows Part 1 is chock full of character interaction, development. There's actually something going on. Not in terms of plot, but in terms of the characters. The characters are constantly talking and expressing themselves and getting and talking about the hardships that they're going through just to stop Voldemort from destroying the world. It's
although that's an interesting question though. With Deathly Hallows Part 1, some see it the way you do, Pedro. Others see it as just a boring movie with camping in it.
I disagree. It's in that movie where Ron finally finishes his primary character arc over the course of the entire series. Remember that bit where he's facing that little magic version of Aryan, that basically is a manifestation of his fear, his inferiority complex towards Harry, and how he feels like that Hermione would be better off with him, but then he finally manages to both literally and figuratively crush those insecuriries.
But okay, I found a TV tropes quote about that, which hopefully should explain. This criticism was placed against the first part of the film. While it keeps pace with the book, the first half of the book could have been compressed easily, resulting in what many find a tedious movie, sometimes mocked as Harry Potter Goes Camping. The second part, however, was praised as being better paced, and many agree it made the first part worth it.
Honestly, I haven't read the book, so I can't tell how it was in the book, but speaking for the movies themselves, I would argue that the first movie was incredibly imperative in getting all the character development out of the way, so that the second movie could basically be much more focused on the climax. We've got all the character development and all the arcs finished, and now we're done. Now the part 2 can be the full-fledged climax that it's meant to be.
In that case, I guess if you're looking at the first part on its own, I can sort of see that criticism, but I always view them as two halves of a movie.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. That's where I feel a lot of the criticism should go for. However, Pedro, you're talking about character arcs. Actually wanted me to point out a bit of a character arc here. So, Abby and Ellie are arguably the two sides of what I consider bad character arc writing.
Yeah.
Abby's character pretty much stays stagnant throughout the game. She doesn't really change her morals. Oh, trust me, the game tries to say that she's changed, but let's be honest, she hasn't learned a damn thing, and she doesn't really change.
Not to mention, as Jova knows, when we get back to the theater, she's going to basically, in one single line of dialogue, she's going to basically contradict her entire character arc.
That too. Meanwhile, we have Ellie, who did have a character change, but it's a negative character arc change here. And you know what? Like Pedro said, that could have been interesting, but by God, the way it's done is just in terrible, horrible taste. Where Ellie is just vilified.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ellie is basically vilified for wanting vengeance, even though Joel was a soul very near and dear to her. It's not saying that vengeance is the right thing, but the problem is like,
Abby's taken vengeance, and yet the writers don't seem to vilify her.
Exactly. And that's the thing. For one thing, a lot of writers tend to forget. Like Gravity Falls itself said, vengeance is highly underrated. Yes, that doesn't mean it's the right way to solve things. And yes, that doesn't mean that vengeance will obviously not bring back loved ones, but vengeance can be a hell of a lot satisfying when someone pulls it off. Heck, for some people, that does give them a sense of, actual completeness. Now, granted, that doesn't mean it's the right thing, mind you. I'm just saying, realistically, a lot of people would be hungering for vengeance, and Ellie does technically have a right to that, considering how crappy a person Abby was.
I guess it depends on your personal views on the whole subject matter, because most people, including myself, will argue that while it may be satisfying in the short term, in the long term, it's not really going to do anything for you. You're still going to feel empty once the initial thrill passes. Once the initial thrill is over. So.
Oh, like I said, I acknowledge that still is a factor, but okay, yes, vengeance is often a bad thing, but the way the game tries to paint it, it's one of those generic, vengeance is wrong things where I feel like that doesn't really have much business being in a Last of Us game. In Last of Us, yes, we can argue all in all about how pointless or how much of a point there is to vengeance, but in a world like Last of Us, I can see people definitely holding what they consider the right to vengeance a lot more, especially with there being the lack of a justice system, so people might get away with more crappy things. One might argue it's better to be pragmatic, but in this case also, let's consider this. Abby is pretty much a danger as far as Ellie knows. For all Ellie knows, Abby could have done more damage, and we will see later, she does do a lot more damage being kept alive. So even if it weren't just for vengeance, on sheer pragmatism, Ellie and Tommy do have a right to go and try and kill Abby, if only to prevent further problems from occurring. Now some may say, this might bring the wrath of the WLF on them. Yeah, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. It won't. For good reasons, mind you. But killing Abby will not bring the wrath of the WLF on them.
Well, let me guess. Abby is viewed in the WRLF as like a pariah or something.
No, but she's going to be labeled a traitor later when Isaac finds this out. Yes, but
I hate that. But more on that later.
Whatever, Joe. But that plot point gets established and immediately abandoned in the span of 10 seconds. So it's not like it's not like it matters.
Well, but don't you see, it's such a big turning point for
it's
Abby's character.
No, it's fucking not.
King tries to convince.
You can't even finish that sentence with a straight face. But anyway,
I can. It's just that it's honestly what the game believes. It's like, seriously, it's like looking at a person literally deluded into thinking that they're painting a masterpiece. But in reality, they're just flinging trash onto a wall.
Exactly. Okay, we're almost done at the hotel, fortunately. And guess what? They're going to try to recap. Remember that dark joke in the first game where with Aaron and Sam in tow, we went for that entire little building that had the mini orphanage thing. And then when we managed to finally get out, there's a little graffiti words right at the exit saying be careful, infected inside, and Ellie was all like, well, thanks for that, dude. Right, so that was a nice little ironic joke. They're gonna when we get out of this hotel, they're gonna try to do something similar, but let's just say because this game is genuinely frustrating, unlike the first game, it's gonna fire back.
But don't you see, Pedro?
Backfire.
Backfire, yeah, Sarah.
don't you see, Pedro? Lev is the new Abby. He even has a bow and arrow.
Well, actually, Jova, remember.
Sorry, the new Ellie.
Yeah, basically, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Joe, you only introduced Abby, and now you're grooming her replacements.
That's the basic gist of it right now. Abby's the new Joel, and Lev is the new Ellie. That's the basic gist of it.
Even has the bow and arrow, just like Ellie did in the first game. Cute.
That's exactly it. As you guys have probably already guessed, yes, they're trying to and this is by Neil's own admission. This is not me theorizing. This is not me going off whatever somebody else said. Neil himself admitted this in the Kind of Funny Games spoiler cast that he did. That Abby is supposed to go through the same arc that Joel went through, where through taking care of this kid, she her heart starts to open up and blah 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 blah.
Now you probably think, oh, well, that's probably a good reason for this game to be so much longer than the first game, right? Except, as we've shown, they barely mingle during segments like these, which would have been great for mingling between them.
Exactly. Now, okay, you want to have this long hotel section. How about have the characters constantly talk with each other, have more scenes, so we can
like how you do in Uncharted games?
Or the first Last of Us?
And again, like I said, here's the main problem. They don't get nearly as much time to themselves because this game is trying to force everything it can into it like it's constipated. So,
but there's so much blank space of nothing where they could have done that.
Yeah,
I know, right? It's just baffling.
I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine with story parallels. If you wanted to do that, that was fine. But the interaction needs to be there. It just isn't.
Yeah, one of my favorite films of all.
More insulting.
Yeah, one of my favorite films of all time, The Little Prince, which is literally telling two stories that have basically exact parallels between each other, where it's basically summing up the story of the book, while at the same time telling a new sequel story with the Aviator that is basically a direct parallel to basically everything that happens in the book. Like, literally, I'm not even kidding. Look it up. You can basically practically every scene of the original storyline, it has a direct parallel to something that happens in the book.
Whereas in this game, at best we have the fact that Abby and Lev. Well, okay, even I can't even say the relationship is a parallel because it's not as well developed. At best, we got that, Abby is the stronger, tougher one with the better weapons, and Lev is the weaker one with the bow and arrow. That's like the main comparison I draw to Joel and Ellie, because I refuse to soil the former's relationship by comparing it to these. Like, yeah, it's similar in the sense that Abby's there to protect Lev, but they have not gotten to know them nearly as well. And in the span of time that Abby will, in fact, go to great lengths just to protect Lev, she's known that for 2 days.
It's a completely exactly it, Jova. It's a complete misunderstanding of how the first game went. The first game, let me remind everybody that the first game's story took place over the entirety of a year. Ellie and Joel spent an entire year on their own together. Abby and Lev, because remember, technically they only met in the night of the first day. So at this point, they haven't even known each other for a full day yet.
Now, okay, one thing a lot of people tend to forget is, like, well, for as much as Disney make fun of themselves with the Frozen movie, where they really started to make it so that the couples would have actual proper developing relationships was in the Renaissance era, with stuff like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, or Lion King, or, hell, even Hunchback of Notre Dame, even though it's not the couple that you expected to be there. In stuff like the Renaissance era, we saw the couples bonding over the span of more than just a day or 2 or 3, but hell, in Beauty and the Beast case, over the course of practically a year, and in Aladdin's case, over the course of, at the very least, a week or so, and one that actually felt that it could properly be bought into.
Personally, go ahead.
For a modern example, there's Tangled.
Oh yeah.
Well, personally, I can understand, Jova. Why would you interpret it that way? And I know that because a lot of people interpret it like that. Personally, I've always interpreted it as just part of Anna's arc, where she has to learn what love means because of her sheltered nature. She doesn't actually know how this thing is supposed to work, and that's why.
She just believes in the fairy tale.
Oh yeah. Pedro. I get that. What I say is, like, a lot of people tend to mainly just focus on the whole Hans making that joke, which is obviously at the expense of older Disney movies, and people thinking, oh, Frozen was the first movie that finally addressed this. But
not really. Enchanted did.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people tend to forget
That's
that.
a great movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. A lot of people
Why
tend to
can't we
forget
be watching that instead?
I know, right? The thing is, my point is that a lot of people tend to forget that Disney were starting to grow out of that
Wisconsin.
as early as the...
Hey, look, Wisconsin has a kitty on its thing.
Oh,
apparently,
it looks like a
Does it?
bobcat.
apparently,
Looks like a bobcat or lynx.
weird.
Anyway, my point
Is Wisconsin known for its bobcats?
Yeah, in the forest areas. But yeah,
You were
like
saying,
I
Jova?
said, a lot of people tend to forget that Disney were starting to address that as early as the Renaissance era. But a lot of people think Frozen was the one that started the whole trend here. And I don't know, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but because Frozen was so popular, that's how a lot of people viewed it as.
Sure.
Frozen being
Like,
the one that was the
sorry.
revolutionary one.
I understand that. But I will. But that's more. But that's more so the audience perception rather than a fault of the movie itself, if you ask me.
Oh, no, Pedro. I'm not saying that it's a fault in the movie. It's definitely mainly on the audience perception. But back to getting on track. Why do I bring that up? Because Abby and Lev's relationship is impossible for me to buy on any sense of the jurisdiction.
Jova.
Oh,
Wow.
so you're gonna make us look at it as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Fuck off, Neil. Fuck off. You see,
Look
you-
at that
Sorry,
nice
what
shortcut
happened?
where you could have
Lav just showed us the path that we would have taken if Abby hadn't fallen. But like I said, they're,
mentioned for good measure that there would have been no infected that way either.
again, they're trying to recapture that joke that I mentioned from the first game. But
it just comes off as teasing and not in a good way.
yeah.
I'm not even angry at that one. I just think it's funny.
Oh, just
Mine, would it have been any funnier if the plot was good, though?
Probably not. No,
would've.
it probably would still not have been a good idea. I mean, maybe you could save it if there wasn't so much padding to begin with.
Again.
But
Oh, sorry, go on.
no, that's it.
But yeah, that is just the thing, though. I cannot buy Abby or Lev's relationship on any sense
Me neither.
of the term. Like, okay, let's say I tried to take this from a narrative standpoint. From a narrative standpoint, Abby knows Yar and Lev from when they incidentally met in the forest and helped each other out. Then, for a pretty weak reason, she goes back to help them and incidentally ends up saving them. Fine. Then there's the whole Yar is hurt and needs the medical supplies. And now we're just going to the hospital. Yes, Abby and Lev are technically getting to know each other. The problem is that narratively, they haven't spoken much.
Nope.
Now, you could say maybe it's supposed to be a silent relationship, but then we go to gameplay-wise. Gameplay-wise, they don't really feel like that much of a unit.
Hell, what do we know about Lev specifically? The only prominent thing that Neil seems to be interested in telling us about him is that he's a trans boy. That's not a character
And a
trait.
member of Scars. That's basically it.
Yes, and supposedly this religious member of Scars isn't that familiar with technology, so he has to learn to become
Alright, so
not like a Scar.
the hospital is the WLF hospital, so obviously Lev cannot go in there. So Abby's gonna go alone.
Wait, why?
Well, Lev... Yeah, exactly.
I'm just worried about a backgammon rematch. What's backgammon?
You really don't get it? He's a part of a religious cult. He don't know jack squat.
To be fair, that makes sense in context.
Yeah,
I mean,
this hasn't happened much. I'm fine with this personally.
I'm just gonna say it gets old because, like I said, we've established he apparently doesn't know what a flashlight is because he was a part of a religious cult. So you're telling me this religious cult never found a use for flashlights?
well, actually, Joe, but he did know how to use the flashlight, so...
I'm talking about that joke earlier where it hints that he doesn't know how a flashlight works. So you remember where he literally goes, "Oh, so that's how it works." When
okay.
Abby hands him the flashlight.
Oh, okay then.
So
Maybe
yeah.
maybe it's more so that he personally never used one. Maybe.
How
Yeah,
old
maybe
is
there was
he?
something about that one. Maybe it was just
he looks-
difficult to actually switch on. I don't know.
He looks 13 around there. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't give him more than 15.
Sure, it'd be nice if we knew more about him, but that's the thing. At the end of the day, Lev is pretty much just a prop for this game's story.
Mm-hmm. Basically. He's just here as a way to once again try to force feed this idea that Abby is wonderful and that you should love her. But anyway, see you for the next part, everybody.
Ta-ta!
See it.